Morning, everyone. Welcome to another LGW Frontline Conversation. We're excited to be with you today. We're also very excited that PNC Bank is sponsoring these Frontline Conversations. I want to introduce Terry Copeland from PNC to say a few words of welcome to you all. Terry?
I guess it's helpful if I unmute before I start speaking. But good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for joining this important conversation. It is definitely a privilege and always an honor for PNC to support an organization like Leadership Greater Washington. We have been longtime partners with LGW because we understand the value of an LGW in our region. We have been supportive of the racial equity work LGW has done. We were the sponsors for the Lessons in Leadership that has now pivoted to Frontline Conversations because we respect the fact that Leadership Greater Washington provides this space, this table for leaders that can make change in our regions in times like this. We are actively engaged in the community. As you know, we're active PNC branches all over the region, and that's why we are always supportive of trying to find opportunities to uncover the challenges of the region and then create opportunities for collaboration to address some of these. And in that regard, today's conversation is a very important one. I'm thrilled to introduce my fellow classmate, David Harrington from the class of 2015. Enough said, the best class ever, of course. Just would love to share because David Harrington clearly is a service person. He provides service to his communities as represented by the fact that he was mayor in the county. He then became a council person for the county, and then even a state senator in Maryland. So has a service heart, which is part of the DNA of our LGW membership. So he is definitely actively engaged now as the president and CEO of the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce. And in that regard is kind of an advocate, spokesperson, and policy advisor for over 500 businesses in the county. A very important voice in this time of change in our region. And with that, I am happy to introduce David Harrington, my friend, my colleague, and my classmate. Doug, I'll turn it over to you.
Terry, thank you so much. And thanks to PNC for helping us put on these great conversations. Thank you, Terry. So David, we've known each other for quite a while.
Yes.
There's so many questions to ask you, David.
As I said, you've been waiting for
this. Off with, how's your health? How's your family's health? How are you dealing with COVID?
No, thank you very much. And let me add my thanks to PNC for sponsoring this. And Terry, thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Enough said, class of 15, the best. And certainly Leadership Greater Washington was fortunate to hire Doug Duncan at that time. I think you were in our class, it was like the first day that you had started as president.
First day on the job was the opening.
First day on the job. And so we were able to snag in our class the distinguished president of LGW. So, but thank you, Doug. Really appreciate it. And my health is fine, and and my family and my wife Cheryl and grandchildren and my two sons, they're all well. But we just learned some news that my wife's sister and whose mother also is in Virginia, and her husband just got tested positively for COVID.
Oh.
And they're going through, the headaches and all the things that normally go in COVID. So we're keeping in touch with them. And so what I would say is that as a community, we need to take this very seriously. It is a troubling, obviously, disease, and certainly hope that other families are doing well. But so we're not immune to it. But thanks for asking.
No, I'm very sorry to hear that. It is a horrible disease, and we're all sort of working around trying to make sure that we don't catch it. So I hope all goes well there.
Yeah, so far so good. They're recovering, and no respiratory things. So far so good. But thank you for asking.
So when this really hit 6 months ago, what did you do with the chamber? How did you go to a virtual office, and what were those decisions like?
Yeah, so as soon as we got word where the schools were closing, then I immediately went to a virtual a virtual workplace, and we've been virtual ever since then. I would say about March, we've been in virtual, and I suspect that we will go virtual until maybe the spring of 2021. The good news about going virtual, however, is that we have not lost a step of our work, and in many ways, I think we've even prospered more in getting in touch with our members and what have you. We could talk about strategies on, I think, how to keep your work life going strong and even being innovative. But I thought it was best that we shut down the office, that we don't have any opportunities of spreading COVID, particularly my team. And but so far so good in terms of working virtually.
And how's it been managing sort of a workforce virtually? What have been some of the challenges you've had?
Yeah, so the challenge is that you don't meet each other day to day. You don't have those sort of impromptu conversations that sometimes emerge, right? And I think sometimes innovation happens through impromptu conversations, what's going on. And sometimes you don't get a feel for, with the lack of face-to-face conversation, of how people are really doing and what help they need. On the other hand, I also think that people think that working virtually, I think, was going to be easier. And I can tell you that working virtually has been harder. And there's more meetings, there's more work. We set some clear timetables and deliverables and measurables. And I think in that sense, then, with knowing that you're going to have some accountability measures and that we're going to touch base with, working virtually has not, hurt our work at all. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, I think has made us a better organization, because now we've had to really think around how to be sustainable and offer value that's so important for us as we assist businesses through this difficult time.
So how have your members responded? What's the business climate in Prince George's right now? And
Yeah.
How's that going?
Yeah, so it really depends upon the sector. Our hospitality and retail sector has gotten the hardest hit. Like, for example, Gaylord in National Harbor still hasn't opened up. MGM, as you saw in the newspapers, had to lay off over 800 people. We're still having restaurants, having to shut down. We're in Prince George's County, we're in phase 2. So despite the state being in phase 3, which is pretty much open at some level of percentage, I think it's like 25 to 50%, we're still at phase 2, where indoor dining is at a low percentage, and we have outdoor dining. So it's hurt our retail businesses a great deal. Particularly, I'm deeply concerned, and many of our members are like the mom and pop or micro businesses that really their retail has gone down to 60 to 70%. And it's hard to make those costs relative to those businesses. So some of them have been hurt. On the other hand, there's some that are thriving, frankly. Those who reinvented themselves and doing PPE work, IT work is still thriving. We're still having some strong development. Conterra in Laurel, is happening. We're getting a new regional hospital in Largo, and that mixed-use development is going very strong. Project in Suitland, the mixed-use development, the redevelopment of Suitland. And there's some other projects that are coming along. So construction-wise, we're doing very well. But in terms of retail, I expect that we'll lose at least 1/3 of those businesses who will never return.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, it's a high number. And when you go ahead, I'm sorry.
What does that do to the county?
Well, it hurts because obviously it hurts our revenue stream to bring in tax dollars. I think the county executive is doing a great job with trying to manage this, but that's going to hurt a great deal. The state is not going to have the money to give to counties relative to education. Unemployment, I think, is about I think there are roughly about 20,000 people who are unemployed in Prince George's County. So there's that, but there's also, I think, some light at the end of the tunnel when I said with construction and development and other things that are happening. And hopefully then those will allow for those retail businesses to recover. But the county has done a great job. They had a $20 million grant program that went to about 70% smaller minority businesses. And
Is that a COVID relief program, or
that was a COVID relief program. And then we're still the chamber also, and we have a capital accelerator program where we're working with our banking members. Thank you, PNC, for being involved in that, by the way, where we're providing technical support so that they can be much more engaged with our banks. And we were able to get over $2 million to about 50 businesses in Prince George's County. So we're doing everything we can to keep businesses sustainable, but still some are gonna, unfortunately, just not be able to withstand what COVID is doing to our businesses.
So are they making those decisions now to close? Have they made them a while ago, or do you expect that'll happen?
Yeah, so I think about 600 businesses. So this money, most of the money has been already distributed out through the county, and we've completed our first round of technical assistance. And so overall, there are about close to 700 businesses that were helped in the county of getting some grants, and I underscore grants because we don't want to place any sort of debt burden on these businesses, but grants. Many of our businesses, in fact, I think there's someone on the line, Tisa Clark at JD Clark, got every single federal stimulus, local and county stimulus that you can get. And so, those businesses are doing really well, but we want to stress grants rather than loans because obviously that's a debt that's put on the books of these businesses. And, they still gonna have to pay that back even in this time of uncertainty.
And what are your members asking for now? What are they reaching out to you for? What kind of help do they need?
I would say two things: technical assistance in terms of trying to connect with banks, and money. There's still the tension that is there for our businesses is trying to make the cost. So there's still lease payments, there's still payroll, there's still other things that they still have to be responsible for. And honestly, and I'll speak very, very bluntly, this delay in Congress, particularly when it comes to payroll protection, that logjam has got to be just dealt with in a way that gets money out to these businesses, because the payroll protection program was literally a godsend for many of these businesses. It's if you're not familiar with it, I'll be very quick. The payroll protection program allowed for businesses to literally get free money. I mean, even though it was a loan, but if you spend it within a period that Congress extended, then it becomes a grant, and you can pay, get payroll, lease, and other costs that is basically free money for you to spend. And that program has been great for business, and hopefully, and I know LGW is involved in this, and we're involved in this, to get Congress to unlock that money in a way that gets directly to business. But what businesses need now is dollars to be sustainable in customers and that to help them get through this. And particularly our restaurant businesses are really hurting with you trying to get customers.
So how optimistic are you that we'll get that money? I mean, I look at Congress, and as an institution, they pretty much seem to have said we're done with COVID, and maybe we'll get back to something at some point. It's very frustrating. It's very disheartening that the programs that they put out with the unemployment relief and the Paycheck Protection Program really helped. They made a difference. They kept us from crashing, and now we need more of that. And they're saying, well, not going to happen. So it's very frustrating. It's very, very worrisome that we're going to get conditions going to be a lot worse if they don't do something.
I totally agree with that. And, so I don't know how political I can get here. So cut me off, Doug, if I get too political. But, that's where we've got to be really engaged in not only just voting, but also, making our voices heard. We've been working with our Senate delegation with Senator Van Hollen and Senator Cardin, both of whom play considerable senior roles in the state. in the federal government, and so negotiating these deals. But we just have some intractable ideological arguments that are so unnecessary that don't speak to the needs of our businesses. And Congress has just got to get together and do this. I'm actually somewhat optimistic because the need is so acute that if Congress begins to, if Congress stays in this lane of being so obstinate that certainly I think that there's going to be a crisis in a way where it'll be tough to recover from. So I'm somewhat optimistic that clearer heads will prevail, but certainly we have to begin to push that envelope in a way where defeat is not an option.
I hope you're right, David. I really do. It's too important not to.
It really is. It really is. It's terribly important. You're talking about here people's, forgive me for getting on the soapbox a little bit, but when you talk about minority businesses, so I read a report from McKinsey, and you talk about 50% of minority businesses are not going to exist anymore. 50% around the country. Prince George's County, where, through our economic development, as I mentioned earlier, 1/3 of those businesses are not going to, exist. What does that mean? So what that means is that particularly for the minority businesses, they tend to hire from the community, right? And those are community jobs that are lost. That's community philanthropy that is lost. So this is a ripple effect in a way. It's not just about sustaining business, but you're losing the dollars and the emphasis and the philanthropy that comes along with supporting small businesses. And I think the short-sightedness of this in not supporting small business is terribly disheartening. But I remain optimistic that cooler heads will prevail and we'll get through this. But you know me for years, and I've always been like that.
Like I said, I hope you're right. I hope you're right, David. So personally, how does that affect your membership, and what does your budget look like, and how you look to move forward in this year?
Yeah, so we're not immune to this, while our membership is holding on, they really are, and we're doing everything we can, like you, Doug, to provide the greatest value to our members. Payments come in slowly. I mean, let's face it, we're discretionary. We're not the ones who, you got to pay your taxes, you got to pay your light bill, you got to pay your phone bill, you got to pay your staff, and somewhere down there's the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce, right? But our team is doing a great job with sustaining membership. We're holding on, particularly our corporate members are joining. But with many companies working virtually, it's hard to send that invoice out and making sure it lands on the right desk. So payments come in slowly, but we've also been very good about getting some grants. The United Way has been good to us, giving us a grant to help small business. Bank of America has been excellent. Truist Bank, the Federal Credit Union at Prince George's, and others are starting to step up to the plate with grants. So with grants and membership, and we're still doing our virtual events. Like I mentioned, the regional breakfast that we're doing on September 18th with the Board of Trade and with Northern Virginia, with the two governors, Maryland governor, Virginia governor, and DC mayor. We're doing well, but obviously we're not. I don't expect that we'll finish within our projections, but certainly we'll be able to, sustain the organization and pay all our bills and all that, and keeping our membership. But it's hard, it's not we're on the phone all the time with our membership, and it's not easy, but we're doing fine.
You had mentioned earlier the county's business recovery initiative program and some of the work that you're doing with banks. Is there we have a question from the audience. What's being done to help promote sort of work from home and help prepare people for that and help companies transition into that if they haven't already?
Yeah, so I think in some ways we're still figuring out and reimagining, right? And so we're working with, our online providers like Comcast and what have you in the school system to see where there's help to make sure that the broadband width is being able to help people do, business. So that's one end that we're hanging with people. The other end is that, we're trying to, again, this is sometimes an overused word, but it's time to reimagine what conversations look like in a virtual reality, right? So how do we make sure that we're providing substance and outreach in a way where people can tap into that to help, their businesses grow. Because I think we're going to be in this space for a long time. I don't think that even if we find a vaccine at the end of the year, beginning of the year, COVID is going to be with us in a while. And this is going to be the way of doing business. And so we have to be, very creative like you're doing with having these conversations with leadership. What is the leadership? What is the kind of leadership that is needed so to make sure that these virtual conversations have meaning, have substance, and provide insight on how to use innovation in a way that we're having substantive discussions. And I think that, again, I'm the optimistic guy, as you well know. And I think that what this is doing is bringing us together in a way where we're engaged in a higher level than we have been before. And I would make one more point. I think we're not taking things for granted anymore, right? So remember, we used to get in our cars, we used to get on Metro and go to work, and we knew we had a 9 o'clock meeting or 10 o'clock meeting. Well, we're not taking those things for granted any longer. And I think that not taking things for granted is forcing us to really begin to think creatively and innovatively in a way that we haven't thought of before.
It's been a remarkable turnaround, and the innovation in the last 6 months, I think, has been incredible to participate in and to watch. And we, at LGW, we're doing more programming than we've ever done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Get participation from members. We're getting participation from members who live around the world now, around the U.S.,
right,
which is great. I mean, they're able to do our member dinners and our lunches now, and all. So it's really, really nice to be able to reach out to those people who really had not been able to participate as much before. We're talking to Joe Wright next week.
Oh, wow.
Hospital. So I
Great guy.
I've said for some time that Prince George's County, the three major projects you're working on, one was MGM, one was the hospital, one was the FBI. So hopeful the FBI will make it there. And MGM's had some, as you mentioned earlier, had some layoffs and has had some challenges as the whole hospitality industry has. But the hospital it's going to revolutionize healthcare in Prince George's County. It's going to increase the number of jobs quite a bit. It's just, you want to talk about that a little bit before we?
Yeah, no. So if you look at, thanks, Doug. I mean, if you look at Prince George's County, so one, we have the hospital. Clark Construction is a member of the chamber, and we had a great board meeting this morning. Probably like in the spring, Clark is going to be able to lay out, the actual opening of the hospital. I see on the call Chair Todd Turner, and the county council has done a great job with moving that project forward. And with Carla Reed on there, who's the general manager of WSSC, and all the infrastructure that she's put in that, done a great job in bringing in a regional hospital. Imagine that, a regional teaching hospital led by University of Maryland. And the development that's going around that is going to be tremendous in bringing up literally a downtown Largo in Prince George's County. But you think of the other assets that we have in Prince George's County. And that's why I'm not, pulling my hair out, if you will, around COVID. You have the University of Maryland, the flagship university in the state, just got a new president who instantly has jumped in and been engaged in Prince George's County. We have Conterra in Largo that's now going to, they're building townhomes and other mixed-use development and connecting with the MARC train. We have Suitland, I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a great redevelopment. They're going to make Suitland economically thrive. We have Route 1, which is the envy of the corridor in the region that clearly is working well. I think then we're going to have some other redevelopment projects that are coming up. So there's lots of development and prospects that are happening in Prince George's County. National Harbor, while still, in some tremor, but it's doing well. Some of those restaurants who are members of the chamber say that, they're still doing well. And National Harbor is still, open. And MGM is still, bringing customers in. So if you look at us in terms of what we're being able to amass, we're still in great shape despite COVID, and certainly are prepared to sort of begin to bring in sort of other kinds of things. Amazon is looking at opening up a facility, in Prince George's County. So all these developments and all these opportunities that are coming to Prince George's County are still on track. We haven't lost pace, And I think even post-COVID, we'll emerge from this as a very healthy county.
Are you all involved with, I know you're involved with the Board of Trade because you're doing that event this Friday.
Right.
With the governors and the mayor. Are you involved in their Connected DMV program?
No, I'm actually on the task force. So I represent all the chambers in the region on that task force. And, you know, as you know, that is a very systems level discussion on looking at cybersecurity, looking at infrastructure. Certainly want to make sure that our transportation is intact during that. And what is the work going to be in the region? What is work going to look like in the region in post-COVID? And we're bringing up equity issues in a way where we want to correct past imbalances that we've seen in communities, and how do we sort of reinvest those communities so that then they're part of the success in a post-COVID environment.
So if someone wants to get involved in Connected DMV, should they contact you? How would they go about doing that?
They could contact me, or, you know, contact Jack McDougall over in the Board of Trade. We meet monthly in those meetings, and former Mayor Williams has been leading some of these discussions. And now we're looking at education and cybersecurity and equity as issues on making recommendations on how we sort of emerge out of this.
So the hospital when is that due to open?
We're talking about mid in spring in 2021.
So less than.
And yeah, and it's going really well. They're on schedule.
In terms of the workers and the employees for not just the hospital, but healthcare around the county, have you seen an increase in demand for those workers and for training, and has the county responded to that?
No, that's a great question. So I think what the hospital does is that it will make us then as part of a sector, if you will identify us as a healthcare sector. So we'll see, and this is a mixed use project. So we'll see doctors' offices and other specialists then be around the hospital, as well as some other, mixed use. And I think that you know, to your question, Doug, which is very good, we'll have a robust healthcare sector. We have a emerging IT sector that is starting to, you know, come up. We're seeing some IT folks come in. As you know, we have 2U in Prince George's County, New Carrollton, and I failed to mention New Carrollton. I shouldn't, you know, where we have Kaiser Permanente, Kaiser's headquarters at New Carrollton. 2U is in New Carrollton. And then I know Clark is very involved in reshaping New Carrollton, the way that becomes. So you see some downtown sectors that are happening in Prince George's County with New Carrollton, Suitland, Largo happening. And I think you're going to see some redevelopment of Landover as well. One more thing I would, I just got from Todd Turner, I saw that. One more, he said that the hospital will open up in June 2021. So spring, the early summer of June 2021. So you're seeing some sectors emerge in Prince George's County and downtown centers that are opening up in Prince George's County in a way that speaks to then creating a more robust economic identity. By the way, for the Capital Region Forum, we have 521 participants, which is amazing, and goes to your point, Doug, that business is not going to stop in COVID, right? It's not going to end. And we're going to imagine ways where we can still have these conversations in a meaningful way.
So the Greater Washington Partnership just put out a survey they did, I think yesterday, the day before, where they said 70% of the respondents said they're not going back to the office till next summer. So what does that do? We've got a question from Rob Malone. What's it do for the commercial properties in Prince George's County? What's it do for the landlords? What's the commercial real estate market going to look like a year from now?
Yeah, so if you were to talk to David Iannucci, which I've had several conversations with, and Andrew Rogers, who's our deputy CEO for economic development, they will tell you that one of the concerns they have that people are going to downscale, right? Their office footprint, right? I think again, this is what COVID, what's emerging from COVID is a different sort of notion of work, what that means, and space and how we use space. And so Prince George is, we're still trying to obviously attract office tenants, but at the same time, people are going to think about then, with this virtual reality, what does that look like? I mean, you can see like some of the companies like WeWork or what have you are, struggling right now because, people are working virtually. I still think that there will be a need for a space for face-to-face communication and meeting and imagining. But in terms of expanding your footprint and for office, I think that's left to be seen, and we'll have to look at the numbers of that. I know we're concerned about that not only in Prince George's County but throughout the region.
So, for the chamber? What are your plans for that? What do you think you'll be a year from now? And in LGW, we are, at least in Greater Washington, we're not going back to 5 days a week at the office for everyone. No. We're not doing that. It's we got a lot more flexibility, got a lot more creativity. I think work from home. You're right. We'll need to gather for certain things. But where do you see the chamber in terms of your office?
No, I see the same thing. I think that again, I'll look at it from, frankly, a crass metric point of view. That certainly if we're bringing in membership, that we're able to do. I mean, look, again, I mentioned earlier, 521 members for the regional breakfast. That we've exceeded participation in the regional breakfast, right? So the question then becomes is what is work going to look like? And for me, it's going to look very different than what we've thought about. Getting in the car 9 to 5 is going to look very differently, I think, post-COVID, which I think is healthy. I think that having conversations like this is healthy. It makes us connect in a way that we haven't before, and forces then a level of connectivity, collaboration, and innovation that we haven't experienced. And it's no longer just about us as singular organizations, but how do we begin to merge together to address some real systems changes. And I think I'm excited. I'm actually excited about that.
So David Fisher's got a question about any strategies to connect local minority firms to technology transfer partners to assist in the integration of newer technologies to help them sort of get through and move beyond COVID.
Yeah, so what I would say is that this is where chambers come in and organizations like LGW come in, is that what we do is we connect you to major projects, major programs, procurement, in a way where you can still do business and bid for business, not only in Prince George's County, but the region. So for the chamber, we're not just a local chamber organization. And that's why I appreciate this discussion, Doug. We're a regional organization. We have to, in your leadership, when you were county executive and you were pretty much a prophet on this, quite frankly, that you talked about that we have to think regionally, right? No longer is it just about how Prince George's County is doing. It's how we're doing in the region and whether or not those goods and services are spreading out to a region. And so what I do for my members is making sure that we not only connect with public procurement, but we get to private procurement, and that private procurement connection, when we talk about all the projects in Prince George's County, extends throughout the region so that then people can really begin to prepare around then what is regionally possible and regionally engaging. And so we no longer can be territorial. Our boundaries are porous, and we have to begin to think about how do we sort of imagine a regional economy that everybody can tap into. And that's where, for me, the equity conversation comes in. It's not just getting contracts, but it's also having deals in a way where particularly minority firms that have been absent in these conversations are part of an equity conversation that are part of these business opportunities.
So we have another question about how can chamber members best support you and the chamber at this time, followed by a nice plug for your October 9th Excellence in Business Are there sponsorship opportunities still available?
Hey, I would say this. If you're not a member, join the Chamber of Commerce. And I'll put in a plug for LGW. Join LGW. I mean, to be part of these conversations and connection. That's what it's about. I mean, I think that what we're imagining right now is connection, and networking, right? Those things, I think, up to now have been undervalued and now are increasingly valued. Hey, if you want to be a member of the chamber, just kind of reach out to me and we'll make it happen. And then we do have an Excellence in Business Award Gala. We have sponsorships and they're reasonable, and you'll be recognized for supporting our school system and supporting our businesses in a way that we're able to help them tap into resources. So Shaka Reed is our business development manager. You can reach out to me, I'll connect with her, but we can use your sponsorships, we can use your memberships, and I guarantee you'll find value in being a member of the Prince George's Chamber of Commerce. So thank you for that question. I'm sure it was a chamber member. And thank you for allowing me to put on a commercial.
That was too soft for you, I think. No. So you talked about adaptability earlier, very early in the conversation. Are there any leadership lessons that you've learned over the last few months?
So what I've learned is that resilience is not just a term, it's a culture. That resilience is something that every business has to face and has to take on. And that resilience has to be based on values and purpose. And so I think that one of the leadership lessons that I've learned is that values and purpose matter. And that what I hope that we're doing right now is really thinking about what is our value, what is our contribution to the community, and and as a leader, I think that it's important that Ronald Heifetz wrote a great book, Leadership Without Easy Answers. He's a Harvard professor, psychologist in leadership, one of the leading leadership thinkers. And what Heifetz would note that there aren't any easy answers when dealing with crisis. And so what you have to do is, and the word that you used, Doug, is adaptability. Right? You have to have adaptive leadership. And so I've really engaged in that in a way. And then with my team and with others, it's much more being about collaborative than connective, rather than singular, right? So we can no longer just exist in the space where we're just isolated, and that sense of isolation has to be about listening and hearing others as we begin to sort of think about what is the value that we're providing to our members. And so my leadership has been strengthened actually by all this. And I really look forward to other kinds of resilience, innovation, and collaboration that will emerge from this once we get through it.
That was a very thoughtful answer. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's a great sort of summary of what you've been through and what we need to do. So thank you very much for that. Any good news that you want to share with us?
Good news. What can I say? I'm healthy. No, not talking about myself. Look, this is going to sound very, how can I describe it? This Pollyannish in a way, but I think the good news is that we're really becoming a civic culture. I think with all this calamity and with all this, and I've been writing about this, that with all this mismessaging and all this sort of rancor, what I hope emerged from this, what I hope that I think will, is that there are spots where we could become a civic culture. In other words, there's a way that we're connecting that cares about our neighbors, that recognizes that our opportunity for change. I'm hopeful. The good news is that I think we're having conversations that I never imagined. You know, I'm in my 60s. I was around during the civil rights movement. I remember being in New York where John Lindsay walked through my neighborhood, where Malcolm X, you know, this tall redhead glass guy was walking in my neighborhood in Queensbridge, New York. And I can remember my first conversations when, you know, my parents used to talk about the Negro when I was 5 years old. And I said, Mom, who's the Negro? You know, and said, well, David, you're a Negro. Oh, I didn't know that. You know, well, tell me what's going on with the Negroes. And I thought that conversation was dead. I thought that that trying to look at a different society was dead. And the good news is that it's not. That people of all races, all creeds, religions are leaning in a way where we're having some real deep conversations around racial equity, social justice, and we're no longer afraid of being uncomfortable. So the good news is that yes, we're being uncomfortable, and that uncomfortable is forcing us to have a conversation in a way that we've never had before, and hopefully will yield results about equity and resilience.
I agree with you on that. You know, Leadership Greater Washington is sponsoring an anti-racist leadership series. One morning a month over 6 months. We had 250 people sign up for it. I mean, a huge response to this offering. And we're talking about doing another one. And what has come out of this series is there's a bunch of smaller groups, study groups that have formed and are meeting and are talking and having these conversations that we really didn't have before. It was too uncomfortable to talk about it. And now we're doing that, and I'm very hopeful for the future. I hope this isn't just a one-time thing. I hope that the country does change. It's tough with polarization, but I'm with you.
I do too, and you know, we're not talking from a space of enemies or trying to make people feel guilty. We're talking from a real space of trying to make change and really making change, and I'm very hopeful around that. I just finished a book by Rebecca Henderson. She's too is a Harvard professor, reimagining capitalism. You know, and reimagining capitalism in a way. How do we build this inclusive tent so that we all don't have to be poor, right? We all can figure out ways in which, you know, we can look at, you know, a healthy environment, a healthy economic environment, a healthy climate, and those are going to cause some really, you know, uncomfortable discussions. But those uncomfortable discussions are being met with, you're not an enemy and I'm not an enemy, and we can't talk about that. But that we can really begin to do that. And I congratulate LGW for even using the term anti-racist, right? That you know, Kendi has used, who's now moved on to Boston University, in his, you know, book Stamped from the Beginning. You know, continue those conversations, I think, are so good. I see someone who said we got to make sure this is a one-time thing, and I'm actually hopeful, you know, given my time, that this is not going to be a one-time thing, because I have 2 young grandchildren, and I'm able to talk to them about what's possible and what they need to do, and so I'm actually hopeful that these conversations will emerge with some systems change.
Well, I'm thrilled you mentioned reimagining capitalism, because we had Rebecca on one of our programs.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Programs with the Purpose, sponsored by Hooks Book Events.
Yeah.
And A Wider Circle with Mark Burgell. And it was a great conversation with her that morning. So we're very, very thankful about that. We've got another one coming up tomorrow as well. So we're trying to give this information out to our members,
yeah,
and help them sort their way through all of this. So.
No, that's great. I thought the book was really good, actually, and you know, good read of how companies can lean in on, you know, changing some policies and how they can reimagine capitalism, not solely focused on profits, but focused on impact, and still being able to sustain the organization. So I thought she made an incredible case, and I saw her speak as well, and certainly a passionate person. I encourage people to go ahead and read the book.
I just read a book called Caste by, I think it's Isabel.
Yeah.
It's an incredible book. It's a great
book. Yeah.
It goes through sort of the history of the country. I'm in the middle of Stamped from the Beginning.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, read that. That book is so great.
part of the whole anti-racist series and just educating myself in ways that I hadn't. And it is,
Mhm.
I look back and say, here's all this history of our country that we were never taught, we were never told about,
Right.
given any insight into it. So,
Yeah, and I recommend The Color of Money, Color of Law, which really talks about housing policies, how it really affects
yep, yep.
education. Yeah, that's a great book as well.
Hmm.
Maybe start a book club, Doug. I mean, maybe get a book club.
Well, we do with Hooks Book Events, Perry Pigeon Hooks, and Wider Circle. We do it about once a month. We feature another book,
Oh, good.
an author, and have a good discussion with that. So we're trying to educate our members as well. So.
Well, any way the chamber can lean in and help with that, or be collaborate with you all on that, I'd love to sort of figure that out.
So have you reached out to any Leadership Greater Washington members during these last 6 months?
Yeah.
Have you reached out to you or
no, so working with so Leadership Greater Washington. I don't know if I want to embarrass them by saying their names, but they're on the call right now. For example, a contact I made with Amazon was through Leadership Greater Washington person. Also, my regional perspective has been done through LGW. LGW has been, I think sometimes people just think of it as, and it is great, it's a great cohort and everything, but the value that I've gotten from that and just getting some real substantive connections and insights and thinking and listening is very few organizations offer, that kind of value. And, but, what LGW also depends upon is that you got to lean in. You just can't expect LGW to sort of put the food on the plate. You have to bring the plate and sort of then figure out then what it's offering and how you connect. And I've never had ill experience with connecting with anyone from LGW. In fact, if I could tell you a brief story, I was in this board meeting with Junior Achievement. I'm on the Junior Achievement board, and I won't say a name. And we just, you sit next to somebody, you just start chatting. And so I happened to mention that, I was in the class of 15 at LGW, and it was almost like we were in this panhellenic ways. You were in LGW? Well, I was in the class of so-and-so. Oh, I was in class 15. Who was in your class? Oh, who was that class? Oh, we got to connect. And we start exchanging, and we still keep in contact, just on the notion of saying LGW. And every time we're on the call together, you get these little notes, say, hey, how's your family doing? What you up to? So it's a really meaningful relationship to have through LGW. And I've been, several people in LGW has helped me rethink, what we're doing at the chamber.
Leadership Greater Washington really is a tremendous organization, and we are, through the COVID experience, we're shifting from focusing on our members and their stories, what they're doing to help the community. That's part of the reason for these frontline conversations, to get leaders out there talking about what they're doing, talking about what they're seeing, to share that information with not just other LGW members, but members of the general public as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
David, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the conversation. I appreciate all your insight. And let me just give you the final word here. Let me thank PNC, of course, for sponsoring this, but let me give you the final word today, David.
So thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody who's on this conversation. Doug, thank you for some very good questions. I really felt that it was a conversation and frankly, very fun. And I appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you, PNC, and to Terry for your sponsorship of this and your leadership. And so I appreciate that. And look, folks, let's work together. I think that this is, while we are struggling with COVID and fires in California and all the shenanigans that are going on with our federal government right now, despite all this chaos, from chaos comes unity and purpose. And I think actually this is an opportunity for us to, again, I've overused this word probably, but reimagine who we are. And I really appreciate the opportunity to sort of share that with you. If I may put in a shameless plug, if you're not a member of the chamber, please do so. And certainly lean in on our 2 events that are coming up with our gala and with our regional breakfast, because we just think that being part of those conversations like we're doing here helps you sort of think about your organization, what place that you are in this regional operation. So I really appreciate being here and certainly wish the best. And Doug, let's talk about how we can lean in Prince George's County with LGW and everything that you're doing as well.
Great, David. Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks again for your insight, and thank you everyone for joining in. Next Frontline Conversation will be with Dr. Joseph Wright from the new University of Maryland Teaching Hospital in Prince George's County. So we're very excited about that. That's a major investment and change in healthcare in Prince George's. So we're excited to learn about that. David, thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
All right, take care, everybody. Thank you.